Hey everyone, this is the last tutorial for this text project, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some minor refinements and then also how to render to a JPEG image. Okay, so here you can see the rendering that I have so far. It's looking pretty good, although it is reading a little dark, especially at the top. So I'm going to play around with some different aspects to see if I can brighten this up and keep the scene as is before we render to the final one. Okay, so let's minimize this and talk about our scene a little bit. Okay, so the first thing that we can do with this is we can adjust how it renders out in the picture viewer. Okay, so we can do this by doing the render settings. So I'll go back to my render settings. I'm going to go to global illumination, and this is commonly set at 1. But if we increase this in small increments, like we do 1.25, it's going to make it brighter overall. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Now, what I'm doing here to make these comparisons is instead of just rendering the view, I'm going to render to the picture viewer. And this is the same way that we would render out to create our JPEG image. And I'm also just keeping the default settings. So if you go to output, our default setting is 1280 by 720. And that's perfectly fine for what we're doing now. When we render out to the final image, we're going to increase the resolution. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, I've got this set up with my global illumination, my ambient occlusion, all default settings. And I'm just going to click this render to the picture viewer. Now, I did that previously when I started the video, so you saw what the older one was. And the reason why I like rendering to the picture viewer when I'm making these minor adjustments is you can scroll between them to see how they interact, how they have changed. Sometimes if you render it, it might not look like there's much difference. So you need to have something to compare it to. Okay, it's already looking more pink. Remember is a little easier to read. And if I just scrub between these two, there's the previous, and this is the new one. Even while it's still rendering, you can kind of click between these to see how you're doing. So this was 1 gamma, 1.25. This definitely looks a little bit better overall. There are some things I like about the darkness over here. So there's other things we can do. I wouldn't recommend going above 2 gamma because it's really going to wash out your scene, but you can make these small adjustments to the gamma and see how it's bettering your image overall. Another thing you can do, I'm just going to minimize this, is we can bring in some extra lights. So if we do that, I'm going to, let's get rid of these lights in this camera so you can see where I was working before. If you click on this light bulb, you can bring in just a simple light object. Now it's going to bring it in at 0, 0, 0. So it's actually inside of the E right now, which is going to make it look really weird. In order to orient yourself with the lighting and the object, I think it's a good idea to prop in a camera. So we've got our scene all set up. We don't want to move this anymore or adjust it. So we'll click on this camera, and it's going to put a camera in directly at that same perspective that we're looking. Now, I know you can't tell much of a difference now, but if I was to click this little button, we'd be looking in through the camera. If we click out of it, we're out of the camera. So the nice thing about this, kind of hard with this scene, but if I was to rotate around like this, okay, if I click into the camera again, it goes back to that original view. Okay, the other thing that's helpful about this is if I go to multiple views, I can see where my camera is pointing. It's pointing directly along the Z at this object. So this helps me orient my lighting. Now in my scene, the lighting is coming from the left of this object. So I'm going to take this light here and I'm just going to move it over to the left. And then I'm also going to bring it back a little bit and a little further in the distance. Okay, so kind of like where the window would be coming from, a little bit there where the light was entering into the scene. Okay, and then if I zoom out this way, I'm going to bring it ever so slightly up, a little higher light than a lower light. Okay, so now we can render this out and see what sort of changes it's been made. So if I click to render to the picture viewer, this will go through the processes, keeping all of my defaults the same, and we can see how this looks. Already I can see that there's a bit of a difference here. It's definitely brighter. We definitely see the difference between the right side of the E and the face of the E, which is good. I like the way that that is looking. It's a little bit too punchy right now, but we can make some adjustments for that. So let's look through original render, a little bit of gamma, with a light. Definitely better with a light, but let's do a few things to tweak this out. All right. I'm going to go back to 1 gamma on my global illumination. So we keep that a little darker. I'm going to try this light as an area light instead of a omni light. Under your light and under general, you have different types of lighting that you can choose here. Area light is a little bit more like a window. So I'm going to choose that and see if we get any difference before tweaking anything else. Render to the picture viewer again, and we can check this out. This is a real trial and error, tweaking small buttons as you go, making percentage differences, and then analyzing and seeing what looks best. I'm kind of guessing here. I do like the little bit darker, definitely seeing the left compared to the face. It's looking pretty good. Let's see what the intensity of this looks like. You clearly read the text on top, which I think is looking pretty good. Okay, I think it's not too bad. It's a little bit dark on this side compared to this side. I wonder if I can make a shift there. I won't spare you those details, but this is the way of thinking, right? Like how do you make these comparisons? This is definitely better than this. We can just move that lighting a little bit. I think we'll be in good shape. So I'm going to experiment with that. And in the meantime, let's talk about how to send this up for a final render. So slide it out a little bit. That's going to be better. The other thing that you can do with this is you can do a quick view. If I just want to see how this is lighting here, I can go up to render and render region, and then I can drag over what I want to render and it'll just render that part out. So that's looking pretty good. I like the way that looks. Okay. Last thing is let's do this and let's rotate our this way. I think that should help as well. Okay, I'm satisfied. I'm going to render this out for a final print, final image, and I'm going to increase my resolution. We're going to output. I'm going to click lock ratio, and instead of 1720, we're going to make this 1440. So we'll double the scale. Automatically, when you click outside of this, it will scale this proportionally. So that's good. I'm going to choose a path to save this. So I'm going to go here where it says save, choose file, and click these little 3 dots. And I am going to put this in my remember me folder. Call it. Okay. Format TIFF. Let's just choose JPEG for now because we don't need a really, really high resolution image. Let's keep it a little smaller, so we'll keep it as a JPEG. And once this is all set, we can just click out of this. Now, it's not going to save it yet, even though we did click a name for it to save. We need to render it to the picture viewer to ray trace it in order for it to save. So this is where we'll render the larger image. And already you can see that we're zooming in much closer. So I won't spare you the details of watching this render. Let's pause and we'll come back to it. Okay, folks, we finished rendering. It took 5 minutes and 47 seconds, so it's a little bit of a long render, but the results are pretty good. And since this is high resolution, we can zoom in and get some nice details in here. See even a little bit of cool texture on the purple text. All right, and so where this has gone is, let's see, where did I put this sculpture? Remember me. Okay, and so here's our render number 1. You can see that we've got a nice high resolution image ready to go, import into any presentation as needed. Okay, so that's it. Going through the process from start to finish and working out a render. And again, we want to make a few different versions of these to practice with how we can set up these scenes. All right, that's all for now.